Olivia Carter was a woman whose life was defined by an almost spiritual connection to the animal kingdom. At 28, her reputation as a compassionate and skilled wildlife rehabilitator was well established in Willow Creek. The town, nestled amidst Louisiana's lush landscapes, was a haven for those who appreciated nature. But Olivia's devotion went deeper than most. Her home wasn't just a residence. It was a bustling sanctuary, a testament to her unwavering commitment to creatures in need. Orphaned raccoons found solace in her care. Injured pelicans were nursed back to health, and abandoned possums were given a second chance at life under her watchful eye. She lived for these animals, her days a rhythm of feedings, cleanings, and gentle ministrations. Her passion was a beacon in the community, a familiar and comforting presence. 5 years before that fateful August day, Olivia's life took a turn that would irrevocably shape her destiny. During a visit to the wild, untamed banks of the Pearl River, a place teeming with Louisiana's native wildlife, she stumbled upon a tiny, vulnerable creature. It was an alligator hatchling, barely 8 inches long, its skin a mosaic of dark and light stripes, its belly soft and pale, with bulging eyes that seemed to plead for help. It was alone, chirping softly, a sound Olivia interpreted as a call for its mother, a mother who was likely gone. Most people, upon encountering such a creature, would have retreated, mindful of the inherent dangers of Louisiana's apex predators. But Olivia was not most people. Her heart, ever open to the plight of animals, saw not a future threat, but a life in peril. She scooped up the tiny alligator, wrapped him gently in a towel, and took him home, naming him Brutus. Friends would later say the bond between Olivia and Brutus was instant, almost preordained. Olivia herself often joked that Brutus had imprinted on her like a duckling, seeing her as the only mother he had ever known. This perception fueled her dedication. She poured her knowledge and love into raising him, meticulously tending to his needs. She obtained a special wildlife permit through her Animal Rehabilitation Center, a license that allowed her to legally keep and care for Brutus, even as he began to grow, and grow he did. In the early days, Brutus lived in a large indoor enclosure, a custom-built habitat complete with heating lamps and a small pond. Olivia hand-fed him ground turkey mixed with vitamins, a ritual that further solidified their connection in her mind. She would gently tap a spoon against the enclosure wall, a cue for feeding time, a process she treated with the same care and attention one might give to raising a baby. Every feeding, every interaction seemed to reinforce Olivia's belief that Brutus was special, different from other alligators. He knew her, she was convinced. As Brutus grew, so did the complexity of his care. By the time he was 3 years old, he had surpassed 5 feet in length. Olivia moved him to an outdoor enclosure in her spacious backyard, which featured a small wading pool. But Brutus's growth was relentless. Within another 2 years, he measured nearly 8 feet from snout to tail, a formidable predator weighing close to 300 pounds. The wading pool was no longer sufficient. Olivia, ever devoted, converted her in-ground backyard swimming pool into a new, larger habitat for Brutus. This pool became the stage for many of their interactions. Olivia would swim with him regularly, gliding through the water alongside the massive reptile. She would let him nap in the sun beside her feet as she read on the patio. She took countless photographs and videos, sharing them on social media. These posts often depicted Brutus resting his head on her lap, or seemingly following her voice like a trained dog. To Olivia, these were moments of profound connection, proof of their unique and unbreakable bond. However, not everyone shared Olivia's idyllic view. As Brutus's size and power became more apparent, concern began to ripple through the community. Wildlife officials, aware of Olivia's unique situation through her permits and her reputation, issued warnings. They reminded her that alligators, no matter how tame they might seem, no matter how long they had been in human care, never truly lose their primal instincts. Food, scent, and territory they cautioned, are powerful drivers for these apex predators, often overriding any learned behaviors or perceived bonds. An alligator's DNA is coded for survival, and those instincts, honed over millions of years, could not be trained away. Officer Miller, a veteran field officer with the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, had visited Olivia's property for routine inspections. He noted Brutus's impressive size and the conditions of his enclosure. The name Brutus, the pet gator lady, began to be whispered in staff meetings, a point of underlying concern. Her friends, too, voiced their anxieties. They saw the growing alligator and the potential for danger. Some were amazed by Olivia's apparent control over Brutus, while others were horrified, seeing her interactions as a ticking time bomb. She treated Brutus like her child. One colleague from the rehabilitation center would later recall, a statement tinged with both admiration for Olivia's love and a somber understanding of the tragedy that followed. Maybe that was the problem. But Olivia, blinded by her affection and her deep-seated belief in her connection with Brutus, largely dismissed these concerns. To her, Brutus wasn't dangerous. He was different, special. He knew her scent, responded to her voice, and in 5 years, he had never snapped, hissed, or lashed out at her. It was easy, perhaps too easy, for Olivia to believe that he saw her as family, a protector, a provider. The warnings, to her, seemed based on fear and a misunderstanding of her unique relationship with Brutus, not on the realities of his nature. She insisted she knew him better than anyone ever could, that he was calm, predictable, and safe in her presence. The online comments on her social media posts told a different story. While some viewers were charmed by the seemingly docile giant, many begged her to be careful, to stop swimming with him, to consider letting him go to a more appropriate sanctuary. They pointed out the inherent risks, the sheer power of the animal she so casually interacted with. Some called it a ticking time bomb, an accident waiting to happen. Olivia, however, seemed to remain steadfast in her belief. She posted a video clip of Brutus resting peacefully in the sun beside the pool while she sat cross-legged just a few feet away. In the video, she laughed softly and said, "He's misunderstood. People just don't get him. He's not dangerous. He just needs trust." The tragic irony was that nature, in its raw and unforgiving way, doesn't operate on trust in the human sense. And Brutus, the alligator, was growing, his instincts sharpening with age and size. His original indoor enclosure had long been outgrown. His feeding schedule had changed to accommodate his massive frame. Whole chickens and frozen rats were now tossed from a distance, a necessary precaution, yet one that perhaps subtly altered the dynamic Olivia had so carefully cultivated. She was no longer hand-feeding him with a spoon. The sunny afternoon of August 18th, 2023, began like many others in Willow Creek. The air was thick with humidity, the kind that clings to your skin and makes every movement feel sticky. Olivia Carter stepped out into her backyard, carrying a pool skimmer and a bucket. The water in Brutus's pool, her converted swimming pool, had become clouded with algae, a common occurrence in the Louisiana heat. She planned to clean it, a task she had performed countless times before. Brutus was nearby, his massive body floating just beneath the surface near the pool's shallow end. Normally, he was calm during these cleanings, sometimes curious, sometimes indifferent. But on this particular day, something was different. There was a strange stillness about him. His eyes, which Olivia had once described as full of understanding, were half closed. His powerful muscles, however, were tense beneath the murky water, his body barely moving. Unbeknownst to Olivia, Brutus was agitated. He had been fed less than an hour earlier, a large meal that had left him full but also, perhaps, restless. His natural hunting instincts, never truly dormant, were stirring beneath that deceptively calm exterior. As Olivia dipped the skimmer into the water, preparing to clear the algae, Brutus shifted. It was a sudden, almost imperceptible movement at first, but then, with terrifying speed, his powerful tail swept beneath her legs. Before she could react, before she could even process the change in his demeanor, his massive jaws, filled with rows of sharp teeth, clamped around her right leg. The force was unimaginable, a crushing grip of raw, primal power. Olivia's screams, desperate and raw, tore through the quiet afternoon, filling the backyard with a sound of pure terror. She fought to break free, her limbs flailing in the water, but Brutus's grip was unrelenting. Instinctively, the alligator began what wildlife experts call a death roll, a violent, spinning maneuver designed to incapacitate and drown prey. The pool water churned violently as Brutus spun Olivia's body, pulling her under the surface again and again. Her screams became muffled, swallowed by the roaring violence beneath the water. Next door, Laura Davis was tending to her garden, the afternoon sun warm on her back. The sudden, frantic thrashing sound from Olivia's pool cut through the usual neighborhood calm, followed by a series of desperate screams that made Laura's blood run cold. She dropped her gardening tools, her heart pounding in her chest, and ran toward the fence separating their properties. Peering over, she witnessed a nightmare unfolding. Brutus, the massive alligator she had seen Olivia interact with so many times, was thrashing violently in the pool. Olivia was struggling, her limbs flailing as Brutus lunged forward, his jaws locked around her. The water was darkening with streaks of blood. Laura's hands trembled as she fumbled for her phone, her voice cracking as she dialed 911. "There's blood in the pool," she cried urgently to the dispatcher, her voice trembling with fear. "She's not moving. Please hurry. Someone's getting attacked by an alligator." Inside the pool, the struggle continued, but was a hopelessly uneven one. Brutus, in the grip of his predatory instincts, dragged Olivia toward the deep end. His jaws remained locked tight around her leg. The water became a murky, terrifying canvas of blood and disturbed sediment. Olivia's movements slowed, the fight draining from her body. Within 8 minutes of Laura's frantic 911 call, the quiet streets of Willow Creek were pierced by the wail of sirens. The first emergency vehicles, an ambulance and police cars, screeched to a halt outside Olivia's home. Paramedics rushed through the backyard gate, alongside officers from the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. The scene was chaotic. Neighbors had gathered, standing frozen in disbelief, watching helplessly from behind fences and windows as the flashing lights of the emergency vehicles cast an eerie glow on the terrifying scene. The pool's once clear water was now murky, stained with blood, its surface broken by disturbed sediment. Wildlife officers, experienced in handling dangerous animals, moved quickly, wielding long poles designed to control and subdue large reptiles. Brutus thrashed violently near the deep end, his powerful tail slamming against the pool's edge as officers attempted to push him away from Olivia's motionless figure. It was a tense, dangerous dance, where one misstep could have cost another life. Finally, the officers managed to secure Brutus, allowing paramedics to wade cautiously into the pool area. They pulled Olivia Carter from the water. Her body was limp, pale, and covered in devastating cuts and bruises. The damage to her right leg was severe, marked by the unmistakable deep lacerations and crush injuries indicative of a large alligator's bite. Alongside the physical trauma, there are the unmistakable signs of drowning: waterlogged lungs and labored, then absent, breathing. Despite the rapid response of the emergency services and their frantic efforts to stabilize her, Olivia remained unconscious. She was rushed by ambulance to the nearest hospital, where trauma surgeons fought desperately to save her life. But the injuries were too overwhelming, the damage too catastrophic. Hours later, in a sterile hospital room, filled with the quiet hum of machines and the whispered prayers of her devastated family, Olivia Carter, at the age of 28, was pronounced dead. The tragedy sent shock waves through Willow Creek and beyond. The news of Olivia's death spread quickly, sending waves of shock and grief through the tight-knit community. Friends, neighbors, and fellow animal lovers struggled to comprehend how such a tragedy could happen to someone so devoted to wildlife, someone who had dedicated her life to saving and caring for creatures others feared. In the days that followed, candlelight vigils were held in her memory. Mourners gathered by the local park, clutching photos of Olivia, many of them showing her smiling alongside Brutus, from the time he was just a hatchling to his imposing adult size. Tears flowed freely as stories were shared of her kindness, her boundless passion for animals, and her unwavering commitment to the creatures she loved. Former co-workers from the Regional Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, where Olivia had been a respected and beloved figure, spoke openly about her dedication. But they also spoke with heavy hearts about the growing concerns they had harbored, concerns they had kept mostly to themselves, perhaps out of respect for Olivia's deep conviction or fear of alienating her. One fellow rescuer, holding a framed photo of Olivia with a much younger Brutus, her voice trembling with emotion, conveyed a sentiment shared by many. She loved him, yes. But somewhere along the way, she forgot what he really was, a wild animal. No matter how close you think you are, the instincts don't just disappear. With Olivia gone, Brutus's fate was sealed. He was captured by wildlife officers, tranquilizer darts administered to subdue the massive alligator. The creature that was once a beloved pet, albeit an unconventional one, was now deemed a lethal danger. Following state wildlife protocols for dangerous captive alligators involved in human fatalities, Brutus was euthanized shortly after capture. The once tame reptile, the center of Olivia's world, was put down, closing a heartbreaking chapter on a relationship that had gone tragically, irrevocably wrong. Brutus's death and Olivia's tragic passing reignited a fierce debate over Louisiana's exotic animal laws. Animal rights advocates and wildlife officials alike called for stricter regulations, emphasizing the profound dangers of keeping powerful predators in residential settings. Experts weighed in on national news programs and panels, stressing a vital truth: wild animals don't lose their instincts. Dr. Samuel Thorne, a leading herpetologist, stated plainly, domestication, in the true sense, is a myth when it comes to animals like alligators. You can't train nature out of an alligator's DNA. These creatures are built for survival, and when they reach adulthood, they revert to their natural behaviors, often with deadly consequences. Dr. Eleanor Vance, an animal behaviorist who had spent over 2 decades studying reptilian behavior, offered further insight into what likely happened between Olivia and Brutus in those final, devastating moments. Alligators are territorial animals by nature, Dr. Vance explained. When Brutus reached full size, over 7 feet and hundreds of pounds, his instincts to defend his space would have intensified. Olivia, no matter how familiar she seemed to him, no matter how much care she had shown him, could have become a perceived threat in his territory, especially if other factors were at play, like recent feeding. She pointed to the timing of the attack as a crucial factor. Alligators exhibit specific feeding-related behaviors, including increased aggression shortly after eating or when anticipating food. Olivia entered the pool after Brutus had been fed recently. This is a dangerous moment because while the animal's hunger may be satisfied, its territorial instincts and irritability can be heightened. Dr. Vance also stressed that some warning signs like Brutus's hissing, tail slapping, and lunging, behaviors that neighbors had reportedly observed on previous occasions, are subtle cues that humans can easily misinterpret or overlook, especially when there's a strong emotional bond involved. Humans tend to anthropomorphize these animals, she concluded, seeing affection or calmness where wildness still rules. But the reality is that wild predators operate on instinct and survival. The boundaries between human and animal must be respected, no matter how close you believe you are. You can never fully control or predict a predator's actions. Olivia Carter's story became a somber lesson, a cautionary tale of love, trust, and the unforgiving realities of nature. It highlighted the fragile line between human compassion and the wild, untamable spirit of creatures meant to roam free. Her memorial, surrounded by flickering candles and photographs capturing moments of her unique connection with animals, stood as a solemn reminder that emotional bonds, however deep, do not change the fundamental truth of a wild animal's nature. The community mourned a woman who had tried to tame the untamable, a woman whose love for an alligator ultimately cost her life, leaving behind a legacy of passion and a stark warning about the wild heart that beats within even the most cherished of exotic pets. Her life, dedicated to the welfare of animals, tragically underscored the importance of understanding and respecting their inherent wildness, a wildness that no amount of human affection can ever truly erase. The quiet streets of Willow Creek would forever remember the day the wild heart of a beloved creature reclaimed its own, and in doing so, took the life of the woman who loved it most.